Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Let me ask you something. Have you ever woken up, looked in the mirror, and felt like you were already behind before the day even began? Like the world was moving, but your mind was still stuck in neutral. You're not alone. In fact, research from the American Psychological Association found that 1 in 3 adults wakes up already feeling stressed, not because of what's happened, but because of what they expect will happen. The question is, what if we didn't start our day with chaos? What if we started it with clarity, control, and most importantly, choice? Because that's where the transformation begins. Not in some complicated plan, not in a 12-week program. It starts in the first hour of your morning. So today I want to share with you 5 early morning keys to master your mind. Not hacks, not tricks, but habits rooted in psychology, purpose, and people like you and me. People who decided that how they start their day will define how they live their life. The first key is simple, but not easy. Wake with why. It sounds almost too basic to be transformational, but it is because how we start anything our day, a conversation, a decision shapes everything that follows. And yet for most of us, our mornings don't begin with meaning, they begin with noise. We wake up not gently but urgently to alarms, to notifications, to a mind that is already sprinting through a day that hasn't even begun. Not with your phone, not with the news, and definitely not with emails that belong to someone else's priorities. That's how most mornings start now, reaching for something outside of ourselves to dictate the tone of our day. And the tragedy is when we do that, we don't wake up to lead. We wake up to react. The first thing your brain consumes in the morning becomes the lens through which it interprets the rest of the day. If the first thing you see is someone else's crisis, your brain assumes today will be a day of firefighting. If it's someone else's success, your mind whispers that you're already behind. But if the first thing you do is reconnect with purpose, even briefly, you remind your brain what truly matters. Wake up and ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? It sounds like a big question, and it is, but the most powerful thing about it is that the answer doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be honest. You don't need a 10-year plan, you don't need a profound philosophical statement. Sometimes your why is as simple as to be better than yesterday, or to show up fully for the people who count on me, or to become the kind of person my younger self would be proud of. Olympic athletes do this, Navy SEALs do this, so do the best leaders you've never heard of. The ones raising kids, building businesses, healing from loss, overcoming anxiety, trying again after failing, or simply showing up every single day with quiet, unwavering strength. The kind of people who aren't driven by ego, but by intention. Because your why isn't a slogan, it's the compass that tells your mind where to go. Without it, we drift. We start doing things out of obligation, not ownership. We chase goals that impress others, not fulfill us. And soon we wake up and realize that we're living a life that looks good on the outside, but feels empty on the inside. That's what happens when we lose sight of our why. Let me tell you about Jacqueline. Jacqueline is a single mom of 2. She wakes up every day at 5, not because she's a morning person, not because she's chasing some productivity ideal. She wakes up at 5 or 6 a.m. because she wants her children to see what commitment looks like. She wants them to grow up knowing what it means to show up even when it's hard, to persist even when nobody's watching. Her why isn't glamorous, it's real. And that's why it's powerful. She told me once that her alarm clock is less of a device and more of a decision. Every morning it rings and it asks her one question: will you choose purpose or comfort today? Most of us think purpose is about doing something big, but what if it's actually about doing something small, consistently, deliberately, and with meaning? That's what waking with why really is. It's reclaiming the first 5 minutes of your day is yours. It's saying, before I step into the world, I'm going to remind myself who I am and what I care about. You'd be amazed what that simple act can do to shift your internal state from passive to powerful. There's neuroscience to back this up too. Studies from the University of Pennsylvania show that people who reflect on their core motivations first thing in the morning are significantly more likely to stay resilient throughout the day. Why? Because their brain has already been primed with a filter on that separates what truly matters from what merely distracts. Now think about this on a personal level. Imagine you're walking into a difficult conversation at work, or facing uncertainty about your career, or getting ready to make a hard decision about a relationship. If your day started with your why, with clarity about what kind of person you want to be though, you think you'd show up more grounded, more focused, more you. That's what waking with why gives you. It doesn't eliminate problems. It gives you a place to stand when problems arise. But let's be honest, some mornings the why feels far away. You wake up exhausted, overwhelmed, discouraged. You're not thinking about purpose, you're thinking about survival. That's okay. In fact, that's when this practice matters most, because purpose is not a feeling, it's a choice. In the mornings you feel most disconnected, returning to your why is an act of courage. It's you saying, even if today is hard, I'm not going to forget who I am. A friend of mine named Daniel told me a story I'll never forget. After losing his job during the pandemic, he fell into a spiral of depression. It grounds you in agency. It reconnects you to your identity, and in a world that's constantly trying to pull your attention in every direction, it gives you something to anchor to. And here's the beautiful irony: the more you wake with why, the less your day feels like something you have to survive. It starts to feel like something you get to shape even in chaos, even in uncertainty, because your why doesn't promise you comfort, but it does give you clarity. And clarity is a force multiplier. So tomorrow morning when the alarm goes off, pause. Don't rush into your day. Don't grab your phone. Don't jump into the noise. Just sit, breathe, and ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? Not because you're trying to prove something to the world, but because you're choosing to remember something about yourself. The world doesn't need more people who are busy. It needs more people who are anchored, who live on purpose, who start their day not with pressure, but with perspective. And when you wake with why, your day doesn't control you. You lead it. The second key is all about action, but not the kind that shows up on a to-do list. It's about the quiet, decisive action that begins before the noise starts. Move your body before your mind has a chance to negotiate. That's it. That's the key. It's tempting to think mastering your mindset is purely a mental game, but the truth is your mind doesn't operate in isolation. It's deeply intertwined with your biology, your habits, and your environment. And if you want to lead your mind well, you start by moving your body intentionally, consistently, and especially in the first hour of the day. I'm not suggesting you need to be an athlete. This isn't about intensity. It's about intention. You don't need to run a marathon at 6 a.m. or lift weights that make you sore for days. What you do need is movement that wakes you up, not just from sleep, but from passivity. Because when your body moves, your brain follows. That's not motivational fluff. That's neuroscience. Your brain is a living, breathing biological system. It needs fuel. It needs oxygen. It needs circulation. And when you move, walk, stretch, dance, do push-ups, whatever your body can manage, you stimulate a chemical cascade inside your brain. Dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin. These are not just technical terms. These are the neurochemical architects of your mood, your energy, and your focus. They determine how clearly you think, how deeply you feel, and how consistently you act. A study from Harvard Medical School found that just 10 to 20 minutes of light to moderate movement in the morning significantly boosts cognitive performance throughout the day. It increases memory, enhances concentration, and improves your emotional regulation. It also reduces stress, not in some vague, abstract way, but measurably. Your cortisol levels go down, your breathing slows, your perspective widens. Now think about that. 10 minutes of moving your body, 10 minutes of choosing to engage with yourself physically, before the day throws its demands at you, can completely rewire the tone of your entire day. Not because the world changes, but because you do. And that's what this is really about. Mastering your mind isn't about avoiding stress or conflict. It's about preparing yourself to meet them fully. And your body is your first line of preparation. It's not just a vehicle. It's not just something to drag along for the ride. Your body is a signal to your brain that you are awake, you are capable, and you are ready. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a man named Tony. He's a Vietnam veteran, 74 years old, and every morning, like clockwork, he does 20 squats and walks around his garden, no matter the weather, no matter how he slept. I asked him why. He didn't blink. He said, "When my body moves, my past doesn't weigh me down." That line hit me like a ton of bricks. Because it's not about fitness, it's not about habit tracking or performance metrics. It's about liberation. It's about using movement to remind ourselves that we're not defined by our past. We're defined by what we do at the moment in front of us. Tony's body may be aging, but his spirit is sharper than ever. And it's not by accident. It's because every morning before the world enters his space, he reclaims agency over it. His movement is more than physical. It's personal, and that's what makes it powerful. You see, we all have a voice inside us. The one that hesitates, delays, negotiates. "I'll start tomorrow. I'm too tired today. I'll wait until things calm down." That voice will always be there. It doesn't go away with discipline. It quiets down when you act in spite of it. When you move before it gets the microphone. There's a reason why elite performers across every industry, from artists to CEOs to athletes, emphasize the importance of a morning routine that includes movement. Not because they're trying to stay in shape, but because they understand one fundamental truth. Momentum is created, not waited for. When you begin your day in motion, you teach your brain to overcome inertia. You send a clear message. This day belongs to me. You step into the driver's seat, and from that place you can face anything. Not because the challenges are smaller, but because you are stronger. It's easy to think of movement as something you add to your list. But what if it's the foundation of your list? What if it's the key that unlocks your ability to focus, create, connect, and lead? You don't need a fancy plan. You don't need to buy equipment. You just need to decide. Decide that before you scroll, before you react, before you check in with the world, you check in with your body, now not as punishment, but as permission. Permission to show up fully. Permission to ground yourself in the present. Permission to rise above the fog of doubt or distractions. I've worked with people recovering from trauma, people battling burnout, and people leading organizations through massive change. And in every case, I've seen one simple shift make a massive impact. Starting the day with movement. For some, it was a 5-minute walk. For others, 10 minutes of yoga. And for a few, it was just getting out of bed and standing tall with their feet on the floor and their shoulders pulled back. That posture, standing tall, changes your chemistry. Literally. Research from Columbia University shows that power poses and upright posture reduce cortisol levels and increase testosterone, improving your confidence and stress tolerance. Just by changing the way you stand, you change the way you think. And let's be honest, life is not going to slow down for you to feel ready. The world isn't going to wait until you feel motivated. Which is why this key is so critical. You don't wait for motivation to move. You move to create motivation. You don't need to feel strong to start, you need to start to feel strong. So when your alarm rings tomorrow and your brain offers excuses or delays, don't fight it, don't reason with it. Just move, stand up, take a step, do a stretch, let your breath deepen, let your spine rise, let your presence return. Because in those moments, something deeper happens. You reconnect with the part of you that remembers. You are not just here to make it through the day, you are here to lead it. And that leadership begins the moment you engage your body, not as an afterthought, but as the first and boldest decision of your morning. Your body is the messenger. It tells your brain, I am here, I am awake, I am moving forward. And when your body leads, your mind will follow. Now, this one may sound like the opposite of movement, but it's not. It's the complement. Stillness. Stillness isn't the absence of activity. It's the intentional choice to create space before the world starts speaking to you. In fact, it's often in the quietest moments that we hear the most important truths. Every morning we have a choice. Before the noise creeps in, before the notifications start lighting up our phones, before the day's demands shout for our attention, we can step straight into the chaos. Or we can pause, not to withdraw from the world, but to meet it with presence. And this is what stillness offers. Not escape, but alignment. Stillness can take many forms. It might be meditation, it might be prayer, it might be simply sitting in silence with a cup of coffee and breathing. The method doesn't matter as much as the intention behind it. The goal isn't to empty your mind, it's to anchor it. In a 2018 study from Johns Hopkins University, researchers reviewed over 18 meditation studies and found consistent evidence that mindfulness meditation can significantly reduce symptoms of anxiety, depression, and even physical pain without the side effects of medication. This isn't just philosophy, it's science. Stillness is medicine and it's free. It costs nothing but your willingness to stop. But let's be honest, slowing down in a world obsessed with speed can feel uncomfortable, especially in the mornings. The voice inside tells us we need to hustle, that there's no time to pause, that if we stop, we'll fall behind. But the irony is, into the day already off balance. Stillness isn't about controlling your thoughts. It's about making peace with them. It's noticing what's swirling without getting swept away. Think of your mind like a snow globe. When you shake it, everything's a blur. You can't see what's inside. But if you set it down, if you let it rest, eventually the snow settles and the picture becomes clear. That's what stillness does. It doesn't make the thoughts disappear. It simply helps you see through them. I once worked with a founder of a fast-growing startup. Let's call him Jason. Brilliant, driven, always on, but every morning he woke up with a racing heart and a racing mind. He'd jump into emails, Slack messages, market updates, news alerts before he'd even brushed his teeth. On the outside, he was productive, but inside he was fraying. One day after a particularly stressful week, his mentor asked him, "When was the last time you sat still and did nothing for 5 minutes?" He laughed it off, but that question haunted him. The next morning he sat on his couch, no phone, no journal, just 5 minutes. It felt like eternity, but he did it again the next day, and the day after, 6 months later, that 5-minute ritual was his most sacred habit. He told me stillness saved my sanity. I thought I was too busy for silence. Turns out I was too overwhelmed not to be still. That's the lie many of us buy into. That stillness is a luxury, that it's for monks or minimalists, that it's indulgent or impractical. But if your mind is your greatest asset, it is, why wouldn't you take 5 minutes each morning to tune it, to clear it, to strengthen it? We spend more time charging our phones than we do recharging our minds. We update apps more frequently than we update our own internal operating system. But the truth is, your external productivity is directly tied to your internal clarity. If your mind is fogged, your decisions will be reactive. Your conversations will be shallow. Your creativity will be stifled. But when your mind is clear, everything flows differently. You don't just act, you respond. You don't just cope, you create. Stillness gives us access to the space between stimulus and response. And in that space, we find freedom. Freedom to choose how we show up. Freedom to reflect instead of react. Freedom to pause before we speak, or decide, or rush in. That space is everything. It's where integrity is formed. It's where wisdom emerges. This is especially important in the morning, because the way we start sets the tone for everything that follows. If the first thing you do is scroll through bad news or compare your life to someone else's highlight reel, your brain starts the day in defense mode. But if the first thing you do is sit quietly, breathe, and listen not to the noise but to yourself, you create an internal atmosphere of calm. And that calm travels with you into your meetings, into your relationships, into your decisions. Another friend of mine, Lena, is a high school teacher in a district with a lot of atrocitic youth. Every morning, she wakes up 20 minutes earlier than she needs to grade papers. But to meditate, she sits by her window, watches the sun come up, and breathe. She says, "My students carry so much into the classroom: pain, pressure, trauma. If I don't start from a grounded place, I won't be able to hold space for them." And she's right. The stillness she cultivates in the morning is what gives her the capacity to lead with compassion during the day. We often think of strength as something loud, forceful, or fast. But some of the strongest people I know are also the most still. Their power doesn't come from doing more. It comes from being deeply connected to themselves, to their purpose, and to the present moment. That connection is what allows them to lead with clarity, to endure with grace, and to influence with authenticity. Stillness isn't just a personal practice. It's a professional advantage. Studies have shown that leaders who practice mindfulness report higher levels of emotional intelligence, better decision-making, and lower stress levels. Why? Because stillness trains the mind to stay present. And presence is the rarest and most valuable currency in leadership today. So when we talk about mastering your mornings, this isn't about perfection. It's not about rigid routines or unrealistic ideals. It's about making space, space to breathe, space to reflect, space to remember who you are before the world tries to tell you. And if you don't carve out that clarity early in the day, you'll spend the rest of your time reacting to stress, to people, to problems. You'll be tossed from one task to another, not because you're weak, but because you're untethered. Stillness tethers you. It brings you back to center. It reminds you that peace isn't something you find out there. It's something you practice in here. And once you access that inner peace, even briefly, it becomes easier to return to it again and again, no matter what the day brings. Because the goal isn't to avoid chaos. It's to build the kind of clarity and presence that can withstand it. What you feed your mind is just as important as what you feed your body. We've heard this before, but we don't often stop to live it. Yet, every day we feed our minds, whether intentionally or accidentally. The only question is whether what we're feeding it is building us or draining us. And here's what most people don't realize. The first hour of your day is when your brain is at its most neuroplastic. That's not a buzzword. It means your mind is in a state of heightened absorption. You're more impressionable, more open, more easily shaped. It's like your mental soil is freshly tilled. So whatever you plant in it, that's what's going to grow throughout your day. If the first thing you feed your mind is chaos, doom scrolling headlines, notifications, comparison traps on social media, that becomes the filter through which you see the rest of your day, and it happens fast. Before your feet even hit the floor, your brain has already been hijacked. Suddenly your energy is scattered, your thoughts are reactive, and your attention is working for someone else's agenda instead of your own. But it doesn't have to be that way. The brain is powerful, but it's also trainable. And that's what makes this key so life-changing. Because if you can intentionally shape what goes into your mind in the first hour, you can completely reshape the tone, focus, and emotional quality of your day. It doesn't need to be complicated. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to feed your mind what it needs to grow: curiosity, clarity, and courage. Start with 10 pages of a good book, not just any book, but one that stretches your perspective, one that reminds you of what matters. It could be philosophy, psychology, history, biography, something that speaks not just to what you do, but to who you are becoming. That's the point. Fill your mental shelves with thoughts that make you think, not just scroll, or maybe it's a podcast, something meaningful, something that challenges the way you've been looking at the world, or pushes you outside your comfort zone. The goal isn't passive consumption. It's active engagement. Let the content you choose actually move you. Let it elevate the way you speak to others, the way you show up at work, the way you think about yourself. And sometimes the best way to feed your mind isn't to add more, but to clear space. That's where journaling comes in. When you write even just for 5 minutes, you're not just recording your thoughts, you're clarifying them. You're giving them structure, you're noticing patterns, and in that clarity, new ideas emerge. It's like clearing fog from a window. Suddenly you can see again. Avoid the mental junk food, the clickbait, the outrage culture, the endless scroll of opinions masquerading as truth. Because whether you realize it or not, those things shape your mood, your beliefs, your self-talk. They don't just waste your time, they reshape your mind quietly, subtly, repeatedly. A close friend of mine, Marcus, runs a nonprofit in Detroit working with at-risk youth. He wakes up every morning and reads one page from the Daily Stoic. Just one page. That's it. He told me it's like putting armor on before battle. That one page doesn't take much time, but it changes everything. It reminds him who he is. It frames his mindset before he walks into classrooms, filled with pain, stories, and sometimes chaos. He told me once, if I don't feed my mind first, the world will feed it for me. And that's the truth for all of us. Because if you don't feed your mind with intention, it will be filled by default. And the default diet, especially in the digital age, is full of fear, distraction, and noise. I once met a young entrepreneur, Alina, who had been feeling stuck. Every morning she'd wake up, check her phone, open Instagram, see other people's perfect lives, and immediately start the day in a spiral of doubt. It didn't matter how productive she was. There was always a cloud of not enoughness hanging over her. When we talked, I asked her to try one thing. Go phone free for the first 30 minutes and read something soul nourishing instead. Within 2 weeks, her energy changed. She wasn't just doing more, she was thinking differently. She told me it's like I took back the steering wheel of my brain. That's what feeding your mind intentionally does. It puts you back in the driver's seat. It reconnects you with your core values, and it prepares you to face the world from a place of strength, not scarcity. Imagine if every morning the first thoughts that entered your mind were filled with wisdom, clarity, and encouragement. How would that shape your decisions, your conversations, your ability to lead? This isn't just about feeling better. It's about building the kind of mind that can navigate complexity, that can rise above fear, that can focus when things get loud, because they will get loud. Life doesn't quiet down just because we want it to, which is why you have to start the day by strengthening the one thing that will help you navigate the noise: your mindset. Your mind is not a container, it's a garden. And everything you feed it, every word, every image, every message, either plants something useful or pulls at your roots. So plant wisely, feed it intentionally, not out of obligation, but out of deep respect for what you're capable of becoming. Because the first hour of your day is not just a routine, it's a declaration of who you are becoming, what you value, and how you intend to lead. So don't just guard your mind. Nourish it. Set one true intention for the day. Not a list, not a goal sheet, just one clear, meaningful, emotionally anchored intention. That's it, and that's enough. In a world obsessed with doing more, it almost feels rebellious to focus on less. But that's what real impact demands. Focus, clarity, and a willingness to say this is what matters most today. Because the truth is, You can fill your day with urgent tasks and still feel empty. You can check every box and still go to bed wondering if you actually moved forward. That's the difference between activity and intention. One keeps you busy, the other makes you better. Intentions aren't about efficiency, they're about alignment. You can only align your life if you first align your attention, and attention is a limited resource. That's why choosing one true intention isn't about limiting yourself. It's about freeing yourself from the noise. Think about it. What's one thing today that, if completed with full presence and purpose, would move your life forward? Not just forward on a to-do list, but forward in your relationships, your growth, your integrity. Maybe it's a conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's finally sending that message or making that call. Maybe it's writing the first page of something you've been scared to start. It could be 5 minutes of genuine connection with your child before they walk out the door. It doesn't have to be big, it just has to be true. What gives an intention power isn't its size, it's its meaning. Research from Stanford has shown that intentionality, especially when emotionally connected to one's values, can increase productivity by up to 30%. But more than that, it creates emotional engagement. And when the mind is emotionally engaged, it doesn't need willpower, it has your power. The mind stops resisting and starts fighting for something that changes everything. I once worked with a senior executive who had a habit of jumping into his day with full speed but no direction. Emails, meetings, strategy, decision. She was constantly moving but constantly reactive. One morning, after talking about the power of intention, he decided to do one thing differently. He wrote down a single sentence before starting work. "Today I will listen more than I speak." That's it. But that one sentence changed the way he showed up in every conversation. He noticed what people weren't saying. He caught ideas that had been overlooked. He said less but got more done because he was anchored. Your one true intention works the same way. It gives your day an internal compass. When the day tries to pull you in 20 directions, that compass pulls you back. It's not about control, it's about direction. We're often taught that discipline is about pushing ourselves harder. But real discipline is choosing what matters most before the world tries to choose for us. It's not about piling more onto our plates. It's about setting the table for the one thing that truly deserves our focus. There's a story of a woman named Arya who was struggling to rebuild her life after losing her job during the pandemic. Every day felt like survival mode. So much to do, so many decisions, but no traction, no momentum. When she heard this idea, just set one meaningful intention each morning, something clicked. One day her intention was simple. Today I will forgive myself. That wasn't on any job application. It didn't help her check off a task, but it unlocked something inside her. It softened the noise in her mind. That intention made her feel whole again. And from that place, everything else began to change. That's the quiet power of intention. It doesn't always show up on a spreadsheet. It doesn't always look like success, but it builds something far more enduring: purpose. And purpose is few. The beauty of a single daily intention is that it creates a ripple. You might start the day with one clear aim, and because you're grounded in that aim, your decisions become more precise. Your time becomes more protected. Your energy is less scattered. The small wins stack. And soon you're not just having a good day, you're building a meaningful life. But here's what's important. The intention has to come from you, not from someone else's expectation, not from fear, not from shame. Ask yourself, what matters to me today? What would make today meaningful, not just productive? And then trust that answer, even if it feels small, especially if it feels human. Don't choose the intention you think you should. Choose the one your heart keeps whispering. That's the one that will carry weight. That's the one that will create momentum. When the day starts to speed up, when demands press in, when distractions appear, when resistance creeps in, that intention becomes your anchor. It's your reason to slow down and realign, to remember that the goal isn't just to get through the day. The goal is to move through it with meaning. When you live with intention, you stop drifting. You stop reacting. You start choosing. And over time, that simple daily act of choosing just one thing every morning adds up to something extraordinary. Clarity, movement, stillness, nutrition, intention. That's how you lead your day before the world tries to lead it for you. And that's how you make space, not just to live, but to live on purpose. You don't need a new life to master your mind. That's the myths so many of us silently carry. The idea that if we just had a different job, more time, fewer responsibilities, then we could finally get control of our lives. Then we'd find clarity. Then we'd feel peace. But you don't need a new life, you need a new morning. Because the way you start your day is the way you shape your life. Not to catch up, not to prove anything, but to simply be present with who you are and what truly matters. Because that's the moment where change begins. Not when you hit a milestone, not when someone else notices, but when you show up for yourself in the smallest, most consistent ways. And nothing is more consistent than a morning. You don't need more hours in the day, you need more you in your hours. And you don't do it to be productive. That's not the point. This isn't about optimization, it's about alignment. Getting still enough to ask yourself, am I living on purpose or just performing a routine someone else handed me? When you own your mornings, you take back the steering wheel of your mind. You stop through the day and start designing it. You stop chasing outcomes and start cultivating clarity. It's not about going faster, it's about going in the right direction. Imagine this. For just 1 week, you decide to reclaim the first 60 minutes of your day. No scrolling, no rush, just space. Time to move, time to breathe, time to reflect, time to remember who you are before the world tells you who to be. It might feel small and insignificant even, but small choices compound and your morning sets the tone for your entire day. That means how you begin has a ripple effect. Not just on your energy, but on your mindset, your interactions, your creativity, your resilience. There's a reason elite athletes have rituals. There's a reason world-class musicians have routine. It's not superstition, it's intention, because they understand something most people forget. If you don't lead your mind, it will follow whatever is loudest. And loud doesn't mean true. Loud usually just means urgent. Urgency is a terrible guide. It forces you to react instead of respond. And when you're always reacting, you're never really present. You're just surviving. But you weren't built to survive your days. You were built to lead them. This isn't about perfection. It's not about suddenly becoming a morning person or waking up at 4 a.m. It's about ownership. It's about saying, this is my time, and I will use it with purpose. Even if that means just 10 minutes of silence, or one intention written on paper, or 3 deep breaths before you step into the noise. Those moments, they matter more than we realize. Because they shift your posture from defensive to deliberate, from anxious to anchored. You've probably had a day where everything felt off, where from the moment you opened your eyes, you were behind. Nothing felt intentional. Everything was a reaction. Now think about the opposite day. A day where you started grounded, clear, steady. That feeling, that alignment, it doesn't come from chance. It comes from choice. And that choice begins in the morning. So if you're waiting for life to slow down before you take your peace seriously, you'll be waiting forever. Peace doesn't arrive. It's made one decision at a time, one moment at a time, one morning at a time. You don't need to overhaul your schedule. You don't need to reinvent yourself. You simply need to begin again with intention. You have more control than you think, more power than you've claimed, more clarity than you've allowed yourself to access. And it all starts with how you start. Not to get ahead, but to get aligned. Not to impress others, but to connect with yourself. Not to be seen, but to see clearly what matters. This is how you begin leading your days, not from stress, but from stillness. Not from panic, but from purpose. You start to notice more, appreciate more, show up differently for your work, your people, your life. And maybe most importantly, you start remembering the truth that gets buried beneath the noise. You are not just here to get through the day. You are here to shape it, to lead it with clarity, with conviction, with courage, because you were meant to survive your days. You were meant to lead them.